Let's get this out of the way right up top. Practically no one is going to cross-shop a Zero Motorcycles SRF and Kawasaki Vulcan 900 Classic LT. Yet here we are comparing two motorcycles at opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm lucky enough to own both bikes, so I figured why not do a tail of the tape. My Vulcan is a 2009, but Kawasaki is still making the same bike in 2022. Meanwhile, Zero's SRF is evolving. The 2022s come with a bigger battery than my 2020 SRF's 14.4 kilowatt hour pack, although outside of that, it is also the same basic bike outside of a few details that I'll get into. Let's start with handling. No surprise here, the Zero crushes the Vulcan. If you can imagine the difference between driving a sports car and an old sedan on a curvy road, that sort of sums up the difference. With instant torque, Bosch stability control, anti-lock brakes, dual discs up front, and no gears to mess with, the Zero just blasts in and out of corners, making me feel like a much better rider than I am. Conversely, taking tight turns on city streets is a chore on the big heavy Vulcan. It's a porker with a wide turning radius, and it's easy to scrape the LT's floorboards. The 2022 Classic LT has a curb weight of 657 pounds, while a 2022 SRF has a weight of 500 pounds. Despite the Zero's lighter weight, it also feels much more confident at interstate speeds. The Vulcan's floaty suspension is fine if the pavement is smooth, but expansion joints, rain grooves, and other imperfections easily upset it. In the city is where the SRF really shines, especially in the summertime, since there is no heat coming from an engine or exhaust to bake you while you're stuck sitting in traffic. On the performance side, by now just about all motorcycle fans know high-end EVs crush quite a few gas bikes when it comes to acceleration, and that's especially true here. It took me a month or so of ownership before I worked up the nerve to try the SRF at full throttle in sport mode. New Zero Land reported a 0 to 60 time of 3.1 seconds when demo riding a SRF. Because of all the nannies, achieving a perfect 0 to 60 run without lifting the front tires or losing traction is easy with the Zero. As far as the Kawasaki goes, Moto Snacks made it to 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds on a Vulcan VN 900, which is about 40 pounds or so lighter than my loaded Classic LT. At speeds of 70 miles per hour and below, the Vulcan is perfectly happy to keep chugging along all day, but at higher speeds I find myself wishing the Vulcan had a sixth gear to quiet the revs of its smooth V-twin. Meanwhile, the Zero will happily and near silently maintain any reasonable speed you throw at it. For the two performance numbers that really count, the Vulcan has 57 pound-feet of torque, while the SRF has a whopping 140 pound-feet. When it comes to fuel economy, the Zero is a strong illustration of why EVs are catching on. My Vulcan's lifetime average is just over 41 miles per gallon on regular, while the SRF gets the equivalent of 206 miles per gallon on the interstate and a staggering 404 mile per gallon equivalent in the city. So, think in terms of pennies instead of dollars when it comes to the Zero's fuel cost. After more than 14,000 miles of riding my SRF, it's using an average of just 69 watts of power per mile. To put that in perspective, that means it costs me about 97 cents to ride 100 miles based on my utility's current per kilowatt rate of 14 cents. Where the Vulcan does crush the Zero is range. It can go about 215 miles or so with its 5.3 gallon tank. My Zero struggles to reach 100 miles of range per charge in all but stop and go city rides. A new SRF would probably see about 120 miles of range in the same riding conditions, and even more with an available power tank extra battery option. In terms of comfort, as experienced motorcyclists know, what is a comfortable riding position for one can be agonizing as the miles pile up for another. It's all about pressure points on things like the neck, the back, the wrists, the forearms, your rear end. Unlike cars, most motorcycles don't come with adjustable seating positions, such as a seat that goes up and down, or handlebars that raise up and down, forwards and backwards, or foot pegs that go forwards and backwards. I find both bikes tiring after 100 miles, but I'd rate the Vulcan more comfortable on longer rides due to its stretched out riding position, although the posture it encourages is harder on my back, while the Zero's more aggressive stance is harder on my forearms and legs. I've added adjustable risers to both bikes to help with comfort and added Zero's lowered foot peg kit on the SRF. I've also added a Corbin seat to the Zero and a seat cushion on the Vulcan. A review of the Corbin is linked at the end of this video, and a quick how-to on adding risers is also linked. Whether you find either bike attractive is of course a subjective matter, but personally I find them both lookers. I love the retro vibe of the Vulcan 900 Classic LT, the acres of chrome. It's a real retro throwback vibe that appeals to me. Conversely, the sleek modern lines of the Zero point the way forward. I'm a fan of it equally. They're very different, which is one of the things that attracted me to both bikes. They are on opposite ends of the spectrum. The Vulcan has that old school charm for those of us that still enjoy shifting and a more mechanical experience. Speaking of shifting, its neutral can sometimes be hard to find at rest or low speeds. It does include a heel and toe shifter, which provides a nice variation on longer leisurely rides. One of the strengths of the Zero is that it's a bike that will grow with you. Because it's relatively light, has no shifting and strong handling, it should be confidence-inspiring for new riders. The SRF has adjustable levels of torque and stability control, so new riders can start off with the lowest torque level that will feel roughly like a 400cc gas bike. Then, as their skills increase, they can gradually up the performance to sport bike levels. That way, there's no worry about misjudging throttle response when first starting out. Both bikes have belt drive. The Vulcan keeps its instrumentation simple with a speedometer, fuel gauge, and one small LCD display that you can switch between the odometer, trip mileage, and a clock. The Zero's gauge cluster is, as you would expect, fully digital and highly configurable. The one you see on my bike is actually outdated, since it hasn't been updated yet to Zero's latest firmware, which includes a redesigned gauge cluster. The Zero gives you the ability to record your rides with a smartphone app that keeps track of things like energy usage and lean angles. At this point, you might be thinking, so why would I even consider a Vulcan or any gas bike for that matter? The two primary reasons the Vulcan is still in the game comes down to value and range. A Classic LT, which is Kawasaki's fully optioned Vulcan 900 cruiser option, costs $9,499 at the time of this video's posting. Meanwhile, a SRF before options costs $23,795. And those options can quickly add up if you want things like faster charging and luggage, easily pushing the price over $26,000. The 2022 SRF does include standard niceties like cruise control and heated grips that aren't even available on the Vulcan. If you are a high mileage rider, you may find that over the life of the bike, the fuel savings may be great enough to negate the high upfront cost of the SRF. And in theory, maintenance costs should also be less with the Zero, since it doesn't use any oil or have as many moving parts. Although I have seen some Zero owners report mechanical and electronic issues. So just like a gas bike, there are no guarantees once the warranty expires. The Vulcan does have one clear advantage that the Zero can't come close to matching, and that's the ease of long-distance touring. Refueling times are much slower in the SRF, and in some areas, chargers can be tough to find. But if you're a motorcyclist that rides less than 150 miles in a day and lives in a region with a strong charging infrastructure, you'll likely find the SRF is a much more enjoyable bike. For anyone considering an electric motorcycle, you'll find a lot more info on electric bikes in the motorcycle section on the web at evrider.tv. And if you've enjoyed this episode of EV Rider, please give this video a like on YouTube. And while you're at it, subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can bring you more adventures in all types of EV motoring. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.